Welcome to Taste Buds. I'm Debra Eckerling, goal strategist, writer, and foodie, and today I'm speaking with Rabbi Jonathan Bernhard, who's executive director of the Jewish Initiative for Animals, aka JIFA, so I don't trip over your actual organization.
No
Welcome.
problem. We like the summary of JIFA as well. It works.
So tell me, what is JIFA and what excites you about the work that you do?
So the Jewish Initiative for Animals, or JIFA, is basically our goal, if we were to sum it up in a quick one sentence, is just to try to get the Jewish community to eat more plant-based foods. I mean, it's a lot more than that, but that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. From our point of view, when we start at the point of view of looking at animals and animal welfare and what our tradition says about our obligations towards animals, we also look at the climate impact of things like animal agriculture, the personal health impact, and we're like, people, we should be eating more plants, right? So our goal is to try to get Jewish communal institutions to adopt policies that basically put plants at the center, not exclusive, but at the center of a synagogue's food policy and what it is they offer up on a Friday night or on a Shabbat Kiddush or stuff like that.
Now, have you always been plant-based?
No, I've been plant-based for about the past 5.5, 6 years. And prior to that, I was vegetarian for many years.
What was that aha that got you to change your thinking about what you put into your body?
Well, the real aha moment began for me many, many years ago when I was working on a kibbutz for a summer, and I worked in the chicken coop. And you didn't have to do that too many times to really not want to be eating chicken. So that for me was the kickoff point, and then was vegetarian on and off for a number of years, just experimenting, exploring, and kind of developed it from there. And 5 years ago, my wife, who was not vegetarian, but was looking for some different ways to be preparing food, came across this plant-based diet called Clean Food, Dirty Girls. Amazing group of women who've created this great program. And she said, "Oh, I want to try that." And we kind of jumped into it, and we really liked it, and it was going in the direction that I was already going. So we just went from there.
Do you have any foods that you miss?
No. Not at this point in time, because now you know what it is that first, so many different substitutes have come in, and so the foods that I used to love, we've adapted and they've evolved, and we found substitutes or just not that interested or drawn towards them. So at this point in time, there's really no foods that I miss. I mean, growing up, if I'm to be totally, completely honest, my favorite food was a bacon cheeseburger, right? And finding good fake cheese, an Impossible Burger, and some fine fake bacon actually really does okay by me.
I love it. So you still have the food memories. You're just ascribing it to similar foods.
Absolutely. The ones that you can adopt and so forth and try different ways of doing it. Absolutely like to do that, because as you said, you have those memories, right? And food is so important in terms of our memories and our identity and our culture and all of that. So it's nice to be able to keep the attachment to it.
So how easy is it for people to increase their plants in their diet?
Oh, I think at this point in time, it is so incredibly easy. I mean, so much so that, I believe that when we really look at the implications, both for animal welfare, our climate, and our health, it's not only easy. Some may make the argument that it's almost obligatory. Like, why would you eat certain foods when you have options that are better all around?
For example, question mark.
Well, for example, let's just work off of my favorite, right? So I grew up and hamburgers were my favorite thing. Going to McDonald's once a week was like, it was almost like it was like for some people going to synagogue on Friday nights, it was like religious. Wednesdays, we would go to McDonald's. So I definitely, for me, it's always been hamburgers. And look, in order to create a hamburger, it takes, for example, 450 gallons of water, right? Because you're talking about what it takes to water the crop, to create the food that then feeds the animal, what it takes to actually maintain the animal, the cow, and so forth. It takes about 450 gallons of water per hamburger. A Beyond Burger takes 2.
2, as in 1, 2, 2.
As in 2 gallons, right? So when we look at the environment and we look at the struggles we have with, water reservoirs not being at proper levels, even given the tremendous rain we had this year, and we understand the impacts that animal agriculture can have, and you see that difference, yeah, you can borderline argue that over 400 gallons of water saved makes that Beyond Burger better in a lot of ways.
There's something sticking in my mind that I have to ask. So how does somebody who grew up loving bacon cheeseburgers become a rabbi?
Well, that might be a longer question than you really want to get into. But honestly, actually, as with becoming plant-based in my eating, it really was a series of small decisions. There was a moment that initiated sort of walking down a path, like working in the chicken coop. But other than that, it was just a series of small decisions, each one seeming logical at the time, following the other, such that began kind of thinking about my food, becoming more connected to things Jewish. Once I got more into the Jewish thing, then it was really thinking about my food, and not only the cultural and ethnic elements to it and so forth, but the ethical elements to it. Right? Is this really ethical to eat and consume? So it kind of just started from there and just, began snowballing very, very slowly.
Okay. Well, this all makes sense to me, but and I believe I did mention this to you before. I don't know that I could ever live my life without chicken soup. But I do like the idea of eating more healthy. And I admit this too. I am a reformed non-cook. Everything I eat, I make, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I do eat healthy in that aspect, but I think there are ways that people can be. What are easy other ways people can incorporate make more healthy decisions beyond, yeah, it's logical, it's good for you, fine, whatever. But we want our cooking to be easy and the food to taste good. So how do we do that?
Well, I think, when it comes to plant-based food, there's 2 things to keep in mind. First, just the explosion in substitutions that we have in terms of meat and dairy. Just so many different kinds of substitutes. So, people can try and incorporate and experiment and see. And look, you might love chicken soup, but there could be different ways of making it. Or you might like this dish, but you're like, okay, this dish I can't touch, but these other dishes, I have all these other substitutes. Oh, yeah, okay, I should explore that. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And with these different kinds of substitutes, as I said, in terms of meats and dairies and so forth, you really do have options to explore. And even with eggs, right? There are substitutes that people have used, like flax meal with water, or applesauce, or aquafaba, are different substitutes that people have used to create the binding agents and so forth, so that you can do those kinds of things as part of any kind of cooking that you're doing. And our feeling is that everything helps, right? So it doesn't have to be all things, but everything helps. And so one finds the ways that one can that make sense, that are authentic to who we are, to explore and make those kinds of changes. So I think you really do have a number of options there. Plus, coming along is going to be cultured meat, right? This is lab grown food that will also give people other options that can help them both health wise and environment wise.
Well, I will admit I've tried Beyond Burgers and they did nothing for me. So what did I do wrong?
So I don't know if you necessarily did anything wrong, because I've had more and less successful burgers at various times. But I'll tell you the following: if you try again with a Beyond or an Impossible and it doesn't work, you and I can go to Tony's Darts Away in Burbank, and I will introduce you to an exceptional burger along those lines.
I probably just didn't use enough like grease, right?
Could well be. Could well be.
So do you cook, and what do you cook?
So I'm not really much of a cook in our family. I'm more the sous chef and the cleaner.
Which is very important.
Yeah, no. I believe my role does have some worth. Not as much, but some. And in that role, look, occasionally, like when we're just really tired and need something really quick, I'm good with like prepackaged spaghetti and meatball things that I can put together. But most of my time, I'm helping my wife Lori, who really does the cooking. And she cooks so many different things. I mean, it's great and it's amazing. And it was something that she learned to grow to. She wasn't much of a cook to begin with, she would say. And it's actually as she started cooking more plant-based that she got more into it. And kind of created the sort of the knowledge and the spices and all the different things that kind of help the cooking really be successful.
And it sounds like almost a parallel to what you were talking about before, as you inched into, your rabbinical training or plant life or whatever, the more you cook, the better you get at it, because you see, it's like anything, like exercise, the more you do it, the better you become.
Right. And it's really, I mean, what we noticed is that for vegan cooking and plant-based cooking, you have to have a whole range of other spices and ingredients on hand that one uses. All sorts of different flours and grains and things. And it just takes a little bit of time to develop that. But once you develop it, and then you look at a new plant-based recipe that you hadn't seen before and wasn't from necessarily the cookbook you'd been using, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, I have all those ingredients now.
So you're building up that repertoire of spices as well as the skill set.
Exactly. And it's like you said, it's like exercise, a certain level of muscle memory that develops, that allows you to become more effective at it and more comfortable with it. I mean, I have to tell you, the first day, I remember this, the first day that Lori and I said, okay, we're going to try going completely plant-based. I don't eat much for breakfast, a cup of coffee, all well and good. And then I left the house and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to starve. Like, what on earth am I going to eat? I can't eat anything. Like, because you just don't know until you throw yourself into it and then begin exploring and then seeing what can really be. So
what did you do? You didn't starve.
No, miraculously, I did not starve. I did not starve. You know what it is? I was like, oh, I just have to pay attention a little bit to some of those snacks that come into the office. Oh, I have to be a little bit more proactive, bring certain food with me, bring fruit with me, bring some other things with me. And just over time, you relearn and develop new habits such that now, don't even think about it.
What do you think is and you mentioned this at the top of the conversation, we connect with food so many different things. What do you think where do you think that comes from?
From when we're born, honestly. I mean, food is the most basic of drives. It's the first thing we do as babies is look to nurse, is look to get food, right? It's so elemental, so instinctual to us, and touches so many different parts of who we are as we grow, and is tied to so many memories that we're conscious of, memories that we're not conscious of, that it is just this incredibly powerful force within our lives that then touches so much of how we understand ourselves and how we understand our place within this world. I've kibitzed before, and I've said this. I used to be a pulpit rabbi for 25 years. Always the advice was never speak about Israel from the bima, right? In other words, never speak about Israel in a sermon because it's too controversial, right? And then I started talking about food, and I was like, oh, Israel's easy. Israel's a piece of cake. People are, relatively speaking, are very rational about Israel compared to what it is when talk to people about their food.
People do get opinionated about their food, but it's only because we love it and we've got that strong emotional connection.
Yeah, I was going to say, by the way, it's not that people are opinionated, right? It's that people are, we are deeply attached, deeply attached to our food in ways that go beyond just nourishment, way beyond nourishment. Just a small example. I think I mentioned to you in another conversation we were having, that we used to, on every Shabbat morning, we would bring home, I'd buy before Friday, before Shabbat, I'd buy a Shabbat breakfast treat for my boys. Right. And for me too. And for Lori. But it would be like this thing that makes Shabbat morning special. They come down and there'd be this fresh chocolate roll that I gotten from Continental Bakery the day before, or some rugelach, or, babka, different kinds of things. And our boys have now left home. Right? They've all left. But I like the Shabbat breakfast treat. I have that memory. Like, that's still part of Shabbat for me. It doesn't feel like Shabbat unless I get my Shabbat breakfast treat. And so we adapted over time, and now Lori makes scones, vegan scones, which are absolutely delicious. And it's a way of kind of keeping that memory going, but it's still Shabbat breakfast treat. It's just in a different form.
It's still the memory. It's just a different, it's like, it's pastry adjacent, right?
Right.
Well, and usually I would ask for a recipe, but I would love for that scone recipe. And we will put that, if you go to jewishjournal.com and you can read the highlights from it. All my episodes come with a recipe, because there's nothing that bothers me more about a cooking show than they tantalize you with food. They do not tell you how to make it.
Well, I will definitely get you the recipe, and you definitely want it from my wife and not from me.
Fair. This has been so much fun talking. Who knew it would be so much fun talking about plant-based food? Well,
my pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Where can people learn more about you and everything, all this great work that you're doing?
Our website is jifanimals.org, or you can just put in Jewish Initiative for Animals, just search us, and we will pop right on up.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan, and thank you all for tuning in to Taste Buds with Deb. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, and you can go to jewishjournal.com to get recipes. I'm excited about the scones, and read the articles that go with each episode. You can also learn more at tastebudswithdeb.com. Until next time, bon appetit.